Nestled in the heart of the rugged Kenai Peninsula and overlooking the serene Resurrection Bay lies Mount Marathon, a mammoth monument of nature that dominates the skyline of Seward, Alaska. This towering mount, with an altitude reaching 3,022 feet, is not just a visual spectacle, but also an integral part of Seward's cultural identity. Mount Marathon serves as the menacing challenge for endurance athletes participating in what is now acknowledged as one of America's oldest and most challenging foot races. Dubbed simply as the Mount Marathon Race, this daring event has been a fixture on every Independence Day since its inception back in 1915. Drawing both locals and athletes from around the globe, it demands participants to ascend and descend along a grueling trail that spans over 3 miles. At first glance, one might wonder why anyone would willingly subject themselves to such a strenuous endeavor. But when you delve deeper into the story behind this revered race, you begin to appreciate its allure. The buzz surrounding the Mount Marathon Race isn't solely about who emerges victorious. Rather, it's about personal conquests made by every participant, overcoming fear, pushing past limits, and showing insurmountable resolve in the face of adversity. However, while most stories related to this race revolve around triumph or exhaustion, or even minor injuries incurred during participation, there's one tale tied to Mount Marathon that continues to mystify everyone involved. A racer who went missing and has never been seen again amidst his quest for victory on July 4th, 2012. Michael LeMaitre, the man at the center of this enigma, was no ordinary individual. Hailing from Anchorage, Alaska, Michael was a devoted family man. At 6 foot 2 inches tall, 212 pounds, and 65 years of age at the time of his disappearance, Michael kept himself in great shape and was active in water adventures and events such as the Idita Ski, which is a 100-mile ski race. He had a wife who adored him and 3 children who looked up to him as their personal hero. His passion for life was infectious, and his zest for adventure knew no bounds. An ardent lover of the outdoors, he had an ineffable connection with nature that led many to consider him an embodiment of the Alaskan spirit. An excerpt from his obituary sums Michael up best. Michael was an adventurous person. He loved Alaska. He loved his family, the outdoors, his dogs, sailing, hiking, and participating in many community events over the years. He shared his love of water sports, cross-country skiing, kayaking, sailing, and many other outdoor activities with his children, grandchildren, nieces, and nephews of his extended family. He completed the Idita Ski, receiving the Sportsmanship Award. He was a grief counselor for children of 9/11 in Washington, D.C. He worked at the Family Support Center on JBER as a community readiness consultant, along with being a hospice volunteer. He was involved in the Forget Me Not grief program. Before Mike went missing during that fateful race on July 4th, 2012, there were no indications of impending doom or any foreboding circumstances surrounding his life. Just excitement about participating in such an esteemed event as part of Alaska's Independence Day celebrations. To those who knew Michael before his disappearance during this iconic race up Mount Marathon's treacherous trails, it appeared as just another adventurous chapter in a life filled with intrepid exploits. On July 4th, 2012, a small town in Alaska buzzed with anticipation for one of the most challenging foot races in North America, the Mount Marathon Race. Traditionally held every Independence Day, this race was no small feat. The course itself is grueling and treacherous. Runners begin at sea level in downtown Seward and make their way up the mountain summit at over 3,000 feet, with an average 38-degree slope before making a perilous descent back down. The average speed of the course record, which stands at 41 minutes and 26 seconds, was 2 miles an hour on the ascent and 12 miles an hour on the descent. The average speeds for the male category tend to be between 60 and 90 minutes, with the slowest being around 3 hours. Under the tree line, the first 60% of the race is avoiding tree roots and navigating muddy and slick trails with the daunting incline. Once the racers rise above the tree line, the remaining 40% of the race is navigating the shale and rock through whatever path they feel best to the summit as they catch a well-needed breeze. This is a race to the summit and back with no designated trail. This is where experience is critical, and in this race, highly recommended. He was also a man who had never been to the summit of Mount Marathon, but lined up at the start line regardless. But Michael wasn't new to challenges. He was passionate about pushing his boundaries and had always demonstrated incredible resilience. He was not a seasoned professional athlete, but rather an ordinary man with an extraordinary determination and a man who had completed numerous feats of endurance. Surely a 5K, despite the grueling incline, would be something he could do and celebrate by that evening. As he lined up for the first time alongside hundreds of eager participants, just like him, ready to take on Mount Marathon, little did anyone know it would become a day that would forever be etched in their memories. As they all set off, with adrenaline surging through their veins and hearts pounding loud enough to mirror the cheers from the crowd lined up along 4th Avenue, Michael was seen for what would tragically turn out to be the last time. The 2012 race was a foggy, cold, muddy, and windy race with spraying rain from time to time. These conditions would make anyone who wasn't properly dressed hypothermic, or even a runner who wasn't exerting themselves enough to build up their core body temperature. The race that year was unusually dangerous, with snow still on the mountain at certain points, and snow bridges that some runners opted to take their chances on. 2 runners fell over cliffs, with one runner suffering brain damage and a compound leg fracture, and the other a lacerated liver and broken ribs. The last sighting of Michael LeMaitre was about 80 meters from Mount Marathon's peak by race volunteers who had already been in these terrible conditions for 10 hours and who thought that all of the runners had already reached the turnaround rock. Surprised that Michael had suddenly appeared as they were carrying their gear down from the summit, they sized him up. Sure, he was slower than the rest, but he was moving forward still and gave no outward appearance of being in distress. Michael inquired as to whether or not he could still finish the race. As there was no official race cutoff time, and the trail was always open to the public for recreation, the volunteers assured him that he could, and that he was nearly at the turnaround rock as they motioned behind them. With one last glance at Michael as he moved past them, they looked down at the town of Seward and carefully made their way down the mountain. This would be the last time anyone would ever see Michael LeMaitre. His disappearance, like a chilling gust sweeping across Mount Marathon that afternoon, cast a long shadow over what should have been an exhilarating celebration of human endurance and spirit, turning it into an eerie reminder about how quickly life can change course without warning. This raised several questions. How does someone go missing amidst such a public event, an event that is almost entirely visible to spectators below? Could anything different have been done? And most hauntingly, where was Michael now? At the base of the mountain, the race had seemingly finished, but Michael had not appeared from the trees to run down the streets and cross the finish line. Race volunteers assured his family that he was the final competitor and gave them an estimated arrival time based on when they last saw him. He never arrived. The immediate aftermath of LeMaitre's disappearance was fraught with an almost palpable tension. As darkness fell on Mount Marathon, the initial confusion gradually transformed into a disquieting dread. The Seward community rallied together, and the search for Michael quickly escalated into a comprehensive operation involving locals and professionals alike. Missing from his family, friends, and the annual race he loved so much, LeMaitre's absence was deeply felt across the town. Helicopter sweeps were conducted over the steep slopes of Mount Marathon in an attempt to locate him. Ground teams meticulously worked their way through the dense woods and challenging terrain, while canine units sniffed out potential trails. Despite their best efforts, all they got were dead ends. Not a trace or sign of him was found anywhere. The race that started as a thrilling challenge had suddenly taken on a somber tone. In the days following his disappearance, Mother Nature wreaked havoc on the search operation. Unseasonal storms lashed Mount Marathon with frothing waves of rain and gusty winds. This problematic weather posed life-threatening conditions even for seasoned rescue workers, turning an already daunting task into a nearly impossible mission. The heavy rains significantly hindered visibility while washing away potential traces or tracks that could have been left behind by Michael on his journey up Mount Marathon during the race day. As each day ended in silence without any clue about Michael's whereabouts, hope dwindled among even the most optimistic members of search parties. But even as days turned into weeks, determination stood unwavering among those who knew and loved Michael. Family members held on to hope like it was their last lifeline, while friends went from being mere spectators of the annual race to active participants in an unexpected rescue mission on Mount Marathon. Everyone praying for a miracle amid uncertainty. On July 15th, the official search for Michael came to an end. After searching for her father for weeks, his daughter engraved the words, "I love you, Dad," on a rock at the summit, before she had to face the difficult prospect that he may never be found and there may never be an answer to what happened. As the case grew colder, conjectures began to bubble up about what might have happened to Michael LeMaitre. After all, how could a man simply vanish into thin air during the Mount Marathon race, one of the most heavily attended events in Seward? Many chalked it up to him getting lost or injured in the challenging terrain. Perhaps he had taken the wrong turn and ended up far from the race trail, unable to find his way back. Some speculated that Michael could have encountered wildlife on the mountain. Black bears and moose are common in this region. Though these animals typically keep their distance from larger crowds such as those gathered for the Mount Marathon race, they can be unpredictable if surprised or threatened. However, search teams found no evidence of animal attack in any of their sweeps. No tracks, no fabric torn from clothing, no blood, no flesh. But there were darker theories too. Was it possible that someone had taken advantage of the race's chaos and distracted crowd to conceal some foul play? Michael was not known to have any enemies. He was described by friends and family as being amiable and well-liked. Yet stranger things have happened amidst such commotion, with victims going missing right under everyone's noses. There were even whispers about something more paranormal at work. Tales told around campfires of mountain spirits had long been part of local lore. While most dismissed this as superstitious nonsense, it added an eerie layer of mystery to Michael LeMaitre's already baffling disappearance. In every theory discussed, however, one fact remained agonizingly clear. Despite hundreds of spectators lining the route that fateful day at Mount Marathon race, despite the town below being able to see the turnaround point at the summit from the bottom of the mountain with binoculars, despite search and rescue teams scouring every inch of accessible land, despite pleas and rewards offered by family members, Michael LeMaitre was still missing without a trace. As we arrive at the end of this labyrinthine narrative, one cannot help but be stirred by the poignant tale of Michael LeMaitre, a man who vanished into thin air during a race. In the annals of missing persons cases, it's one that continues to baffle and fascinate in equal measure. The race on Mount Marathon, an event that was meant to be filled with camaraderie and jubilation, became instead a question mark in people's lives, a question mark that still hangs heavy above Seward, Alaska. As we contemplate Michael's enigmatic disappearance, it serves as a chilling reminder of how fragile life can be and how quickly circumstances can shift. Despite the grim nature of our story, it would be remiss not to mention the valiant efforts made by both professional search teams and the myriad of volunteers who scoured Mount Marathon tirelessly. They bore testament to human resilience and unwavering hope, even in face of adversity. Their actions underscored an inherent belief that missing people can indeed be found. This tale also highlights another important aspect: preparation for any race or physical activity. Whether you are an experienced athlete or a casual participant up for some robust fun, it's essential to prepare adequately for any unforeseen circumstances. While Michael LeMaitre has never been found and his fate remains unknown, we continue to harbor hope. Perhaps one day closure will come. Until then, he remains in our thoughts whenever July 4th comes around, especially when there's a race on Mount Marathon.